I spent many years believing God was somewhere outside of me, far away, watching, judging, deciding when I was worthy enough to be heard. I believed I had to earn His attention through effort, suffering, discipline, and constant prayer. I believed I needed to become better before I could receive anything good. Looking back now, I can say with deep compassion for my former self, what a painful misunderstanding. Because the moment I discovered the truth that God was never outside me, never distant, never withholding, that was the moment everything in my life began to change, not slowly, not someday, but from the inside out. My friend, if you are listening to these words right now, I want you to know something important. This is not an accident. You did not stumble upon this message by chance. Something within you has been searching, calling, longing. You may not even have words for it. You've tried to pray harder, think better thoughts, fix yourself, become more disciplined, more faithful, more deserving. And yet, deep inside, there is still a quiet ache, a sense that something essential is missing. You wonder why God feels silent. You wonder why your prayers feel unanswered. You wonder why, despite believing, nothing seems to change. I understand that feeling more deeply than I can describe, because I lived in that confusion for decades. For many years I studied the mind, the subconscious, the scriptures, and the great spiritual traditions of the world. I read every book I could find, listened to every teacher, memorized verses, practiced rituals. And yet, despite all that knowledge, there was a hollow place inside me. I knew about God, but I did not yet know God as my own life. I was seeking Him as though He was separate from me, as though He lived somewhere I needed to reach. And then one night, quiet, ordinary, unremarkable on the outside, everything changed. It was during a season of deep personal struggle. I had been praying intensely, asking God to intervene in a situation that felt impossible. I was exhausted from trying to do everything right. I had reached the point where I had no more words, no more promises to make, no more effort left to give. And in that stillness, something extraordinary happened, not as thunder, not as a voice from the sky, but as a deep knowing that arose from within me. It was as though a veil lifted. I realized that God had never been absent. I realized that the power I was begging for was already operating through me. I realized that prayer was not about persuading God to act, but about aligning my consciousness with what already is. In that moment, I understood the truth that has echoed through every great spiritual teaching across history: the kingdom of God is within you. Not symbolically, not metaphorically, literally, God does not live in a distant heaven. God lives in you. This realization changes everything. You see, most people live as though they are cut off from the source of life, like a branch trying to survive apart from the tree. They believe they are limited, powerless, and dependent on external circumstances. They believe God might help them if they pray correctly, behave well enough, suffer long enough, and so they live in fear, anxiety, and quiet desperation, never realizing that the very power they are seeking is the power they are using every moment of their lives. God is not something you reach. God is something you recognize. When you begin to understand this, prayer is transformed. Life is transformed. You stop begging and you start allowing. You stop striving and you start aligning. You stop asking God to come near and you awaken to the truth that He has never left. Let me explain this in the simplest way I know. Your subconscious mind is the gateway through which God's power expresses itself in your life. It is not something separate from God. It is the instrument through which divine intelligence operates. Whatever you impress upon it with feeling and belief becomes your lived experience. This is not philosophy. This is law. When you pray from fear, you impress fear. When you pray from lack, you impress lack. When you pray from desperation, you reinforce the belief that something is missing. But when you pray from recognition, when you feel gratitude, peace, certainty, and trust, you align with the divine power already within you, and it moves naturally into expression. This is why so many people pray their entire lives and see no change. They are praying against themselves without realizing it. They are affirming what they fear instead of recognizing what is already true. I once worked with a man who had been struggling financially for years. He was deeply religious, sincere, disciplined. He prayed daily, asking God to bless him, to provide, to open doors. Yet his situation only grew more difficult. When I asked him how he felt while praying, he said, worried, afraid, ashamed. In that moment, the truth was clear. His subconscious mind was faithfully creating more of what he was feeling, not because God was punishing him, but because God's law was operating perfectly through him. When he learned to pray differently, not asking for provision, but thanking God for the abundance already present, something shifted. He began to feel calm, confident, supported. Opportunities appeared that had been invisible before. His outer world changed because his inner alignment changed. This is the secret few understand. God's power does not respond to words. It responds to states of consciousness. And that power lives in you. You are not a human being trying to reach God. You are God expressing himself as a human being. This does not mean arrogance. It means responsibility. It means understanding that your thoughts, beliefs, and emotions are creative. It means realizing that life is not happening to you, it is happening through you. Consider this: if God truly lives in you, then fear has no authority over you. Lack has no final say. Sickness is not your identity. Failure is not your destiny. These are conditions, not truths. The truth is that you are a channel for infinite intelligence, infinite love, and infinite power. But here is where many people struggle. They say, if this is true, why do I still experience problems? The answer is simple and compassionate. Because knowing intellectually is not the same as accepting inwardly. The subconscious mind must be impressed repeatedly with truth before it replaces old patterns. You do not change your life by force. You change it by understanding. Think of someone who owns a vast estate but lives in a single small room because they have forgotten the rest of the house belongs to them. Nothing is missing. Nothing needs to be built. Only recognition is required. That is your situation. The power you seek is not coming later. It is available now. When you begin to live from this awareness, something remarkable happens. You stop reacting to life with fear. You stop interpreting challenges as punishment. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin asking, what is trying to express itself through me now? This shift alone transforms everything. I have seen people experience healing, not because they forced belief, but because they stopped identifying with illness and began identifying with life. I have seen relationships restored when individuals stopped demanding love and began being love. I have seen doors open where none seemed to exist, simply because someone aligned their inner world with divine order. God's power does not rush. It flows. And it flows through acceptance. One of the most powerful practices I can share with you is this: learn to pray in gratitude before the manifestation. Not because you are pretending, but because you are recognizing a higher reality. When you say, thank you, Father, for the peace that fills me now, you are not asking, you are aligning. When you say, thank you for guiding my steps, you are not hoping, you are trusting. This state of gratitude is magnetic. It is the language of faith. Another practice is inner stillness. Every day, take time to withdraw your attention from the outer world and rest in silence. Not to ask, not to analyze, simply to be aware of the presence within you. In that silence, divine intelligence reorganizes your mind. Clarity arises naturally. Guidance appears without strain. You do not need to force answers. You need to create space for them. As you practice this, you will notice subtle changes first. A calm where there was anxiety, confidence where there was doubt, a sense of being supported where there was fear. These are signs that you are aligning with truth. Do not dismiss small shifts. They are the beginnings of transformation. Remember this: God does not operate on urgency. God operates on harmony. When you are aligned, things happen with ease. When you are misaligned, even effort feels heavy. Your role is not to struggle. Your role is to consent. Say inwardly, I allow the intelligence within me to guide this situation. Say, I trust the power that created me to sustain me. These are not affirmations to convince God. They are reminders to yourself, because God is not waiting to respond. God is already responding through your awareness. This understanding also changes how you see others. When you recognize that the same life flows through everyone, judgment dissolves, compassion grows. You stop trying to control others and begin to bless them silently, and in doing so you bless yourself. There is a great spiritual law at work here. What you recognize in others, you strengthen in yourself. When you see divine order in another, you awaken it in you. When you hold someone in love, you experience more love. This is why forgiveness is not about moral superiority. It is about freedom. When you live from this place, life becomes less of a battle and more of a dialogue. You listen, you respond, you trust, and you act not from fear but from clarity. Now, I want you to hear this deeply. You do not need to become worthy of God's power. You were born worthy. You do not need to earn divine love. You are made of it. You do not need to struggle to access peace. Peace is your natural state when resistance falls away. The only thing that has ever blocked the flow of God's power in your life is the belief that it was outside you. That belief can end now. Take a moment, right now, and place your attention inward. Feel your breath. Feel your presence. That quiet awareness you sense is not empty. It is the doorway. It is the place where God meets himself as you. From this place, speak softly within. I recognize the power within me. I trust it. I allow it. Do not rush. Let the feeling settle. This is not imagination. This is remembrance. As you continue to live from this truth, you will notice that life begins to respond differently. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. And when you change, everything changes. Miracles are not violations of natural law. They are expressions of higher law. When you align with divine order, what once seemed impossible becomes natural. This is not reserved for a few. This is your inheritance. God lives in you. His power is not something you unlock through effort, but something you release through understanding. You are not here to struggle endlessly. You are here to express life fully. You are here to allow wisdom, love, and creativity to move through you in ways only you can express. This is your calling. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for perfection. Do not wait for circumstances to change before you trust. Trust now. Recognize now. Align now. And as you do, you will discover that the power you thought you needed to find has been quietly sustaining you all along. You are not alone. You never were. The source of all life lives in you, thinks through you, and acts through you. When you accept this, not as an idea, but as a lived truth, you step into a new way of being, a way of peace, a way of confidence, a way of power. And from this place, your life becomes a living prayer, not spoken, not begged, but expressed. God lives in you, and his power is moving now. When you truly accept this, something gentle but profound begins to happen inside you. You stop feeling like life is something you must survive, endure, or conquer. You begin to feel that life is something that is cooperating with you, responding to you, revealing itself through you. You stop bracing yourself against the world, and you start moving with it. And that shift alone changes the quality of every experience you have. Many people believe surrender means weakness. In truth, surrender is alignment. It is the moment you stop arguing with reality and start trusting the intelligence that shaped it. When you surrender to the presence of God within you, you are not giving up your power, you are stepping into it fully. You are no longer fighting life with a small sense of self. You are allowing infinite wisdom to act on your behalf. This is why effort without understanding leads to exhaustion. But understanding brings rest. You may notice that when you stop forcing outcomes, the right ideas arise naturally. When you stop chasing approval, peace replaces anxiety. When you stop fearing the future, solutions appear without strain. This is not coincidence. This is the natural result of alignment with divine intelligence. The power within you does not shout. It does not pressure. It does not demand. It guides quietly, steadily, lovingly. And the more you learn to listen inwardly, the more clearly you will hear it. There is a voice within you that always knows the next right step. It does not speak in panic. It does not speak in fear. It speaks in calm certainty. That voice is not separate from God. It is God expressing as intuition, wisdom, and insight. Trust it. When you feel an inner nudge to rest, rest. When you feel an inner nudge to act, act. When you feel an inner nudge to let go, let go. This is how divine power moves in your life, through cooperation, not coercion. Many people ask, how do I know I'm following God's guidance and not my own fears or desires? The answer is simple. God's guidance brings peace even when it leads you into the unknown. Fear feels urgent, tight and pressured. Divine guidance feels calm, grounded, and clear even when it asks you to step beyond familiarity. Learn to recognize the difference. As you do, your life becomes simpler. Decisions become clearer. You stop second-guessing yourself constantly because you are no longer relying solely on intellect. You are allowing wisdom to flow through you. This does not mean life will never challenge you. It means challenges will no longer define you. Every challenge becomes an invitation to remember who you are. When difficulty arises, instead of saying, "Why is this happening?" say, "What truth is asking to express itself here?" Instead of reacting with fear, pause and return inward. The moment you do, you reconnect with the source of strength that never fails. There is nothing fragile about your true self. You are not as vulnerable as you think. You are not as limited as you've been taught. You are not as alone as you've felt. Beneath every temporary emotion, every passing circumstance, there is an unchanging presence within you that remains whole, calm, and complete. That presence is God in you. And here is something important to understand. Remembering this truth is not a one-time event. It is a practice. Just as the sun is always shining but can be hidden by clouds, your divine nature is always present but can be obscured by habits of thought. Each time you return to awareness, you clear the clouds a little more. Be patient with yourself in this process. You have spent years, perhaps decades, thinking of yourself in limited ways. Those patterns do not dissolve overnight, but they do dissolve steadily when you consistently return to truth. Each morning, before the world claims your attention, remind yourself gently, the power that created me lives in me. Let that be your foundation. Let that be your starting point. From that awareness, move into your day. Each evening before sleep, release the day back into divine care. There is nothing you need to carry into tomorrow. The same intelligence that sustained you today will meet you again. Sleep itself is an act of trust. When you truly understand that God lives in you, anxiety loses its grip. You realize that you do not have to manage everything. You are supported by a wisdom greater than personal effort. You stop trying to control every outcome and begin to trust the unfolding. This trust does not make you passive. It makes you effective. Actions taken from fear drain you. Actions taken from alignment energize you. You may find that when you act from this inner certainty, things flow more easily. Conversations go better. Timing improves. Resistance lessens. Again, this is not magic. It is harmony. Life responds to consciousness, and the highest consciousness you can live from is the awareness of unity with God. This awareness also dissolves the deepest fear many people carry, the fear of not being enough. When you know that God lives in you, self-worth is no longer something you chase. It is something you rest in. You stop measuring yourself against others. You stop trying to prove your value. You realize that your worth is inherent, unchangeable, and independent of performance. You were never meant to earn your place in life. You were meant to express it. Your talents, your ideas, your desires to create, to help, to build, to love, these are not random impulses. They are ways divine intelligence seeks expression through you. When you suppress them out of fear, life feels dull and heavy. When you honor them, life feels alive and meaningful. This is not selfishness. This is obedience to your nature. God does not express himself through imitation. He expresses himself through individuality. There has never been another you, and there never will be. That alone tells you something important. Your existence is intentional. You are needed. The world does not need you to be perfect. It needs you to be present. It needs you to be aligned. It needs you to allow what is within you to move outward without fear. As you do this, you will notice something beautiful. The more you trust the power within you, the more generous life becomes. Not because you are being rewarded, but because you are no longer blocking the flow. Most people are not lacking blessings. They are resisting them unconsciously through doubt, fear, and self-judgment. Release the resistance. Say inwardly, I allow good to come to me. Say, I allow clarity. Say, I allow support. These are not demands, they are permissions, and permission is powerful. When you live this way, gratitude arises naturally, not as something you force, but as something you feel. You begin to notice small signs of order, timing, and care everywhere. A conversation at the right moment, an idea that arrives when needed, a solution that appears just in time. These are not coincidences, they are confirmations. They remind you that you are not navigating life alone. Even when things do not unfold as you expect, you begin to trust that something greater is at work. You stop interpreting delays as denial. You stop interpreting detours as failure. You understand that divine intelligence sees a wider picture than the personal mind ever could. This understanding brings peace. And peace is not the absence of challenge. It is the presence of trust. The more you live from this trust, the more natural it feels. What once required effort becomes effortless. What once felt uncertain becomes familiar. You develop a quiet confidence that does not need validation. You begin to move through life with an inner anchor. That anchor is God within you. Remember this always. Nothing you seek outside yourself will ever replace this inner connection. Success without alignment feels empty. Relationships without inner peace feel unstable. Achievement without meaning feels hollow. But when you live from the awareness of divine presence within you, everything gains depth. Even simple moments become rich. Even ordinary days feel purposeful. This is what it means to live spiritually, not escaping the world, but inhabiting it fully from truth. You are not here to withdraw from life. You are here to engage it consciously, to love deeply, to create freely, to respond wisely, to serve joyfully. And you are fully equipped to do so. The power that formed galaxies flows through your thoughts. The intelligence that orders nature lives in your awareness. The love that sustains all things beats in your heart. This is not poetry. It is reality. The question is no longer whether God lives in you. The question is whether you will live from that truth. Every moment offers a choice. To react from fear or respond from faith, to operate from limitation or from power, to forget or to remember. Each time you remember, you strengthen the connection. Each time you forget, simply return without judgment. There is no punishment for forgetting. There is only an invitation to remember again. This path is gentle. You are not being tested. You are being awakened, and awakening is not dramatic. It is subtle, steady, and profound, one quiet realization at a time. God lives in you. Let that truth become your foundation, your refuge, and your strength. From this place, move forward not in fear, not in doubt, but in calm confidence. Trust what arises. Trust what unfolds. Trust what you feel guided to do. You are not separate from the source of life. You are its expression, and as you live from this knowing, your life will begin to reflect it, naturally, gracefully, and powerfully. And as this understanding deepens within you, you will notice that you no longer feel the need to convince anyone of your worth, your faith, or your truth. There is a quiet strength that comes from knowing who you are, a calm assurance that does not argue, does not defend, does not compete. It simply is. When God lives consciously in you, insecurity loses its voice. You begin to realize that so much of human suffering comes from forgetting this inner connection. People act from fear because they feel disconnected. They seek control because they feel powerless. They chase validation because they feel empty inside. But the moment you reconnect with the divine presence within you, those compulsions begin to loosen their grip. You stop asking life to give you meaning and start living meaningfully. This is why inner work is the most powerful work you can ever do. You may change jobs, relationships, cities, even beliefs, but if you do not change your inner relationship with yourself and with God, the same patterns repeat in different forms. When you change from the inside, the outside has no choice but to follow. This is not something you force. It happens organically. Think of a lake. When the water is calm, it reflects the sky perfectly. When it is disturbed, the reflection is distorted. Your mind is the same way. When it is agitated by fear, worry, and doubt, you cannot perceive truth clearly. But when it becomes still, the truth that has always been present becomes obvious. Stillness is not emptiness, stillness is clarity, and clarity is power. When you return to stillness regularly, you begin to notice how unnecessary most worry truly is. You see that much of what you feared never actually happens. You realize that many of your past struggles resolved themselves without the suffering you imagined was required. This realization frees enormous energy within you, energy that can now be used to create, to love, to live fully. This is what it means to unlock God's power, not by effort, but by alignment, not by force, but by understanding. You are not unlocking something new. You are unlocking awareness of something eternal. God's power has never been dormant. Your awareness of it may have been. As you continue walking this path, you will also notice a shift in how you relate to time. Urgency fades, patience grows, you stop feeling behind in life. You stop comparing your timeline to others. You understand that divine timing is not slow, nor is it rushed. It is precise. Nothing arrives late. Nothing arrives early. Everything arrives when consciousness is ready to receive it. This trust in timing dissolves frustration. You stop pushing against life. You start cooperating with it. And cooperation is powerful. You may still set goals. You may still desire growth. But those desires no longer come from lack. They come from expression. You no longer want things because you feel incomplete. You want them because you feel alive. There is a profound difference. Desire born of lack feels heavy. Desire born of alignment feels joyful. When your desires are aligned with divine intelligence, pursuing them does not drain you. It energizes you. Obstacles no longer feel like punishment. They feel like refinement. You begin to see challenges not as signs you are off course, but as invitations to deepen trust. And when you stumble, and you will because you are human, you no longer condemn yourself. You return, gently, quietly, without shame. Shame has no place in spiritual growth. God does not withdraw from you when you struggle. God remains present, waiting for your awareness to return. The idea that you can fall out of divine favor is a misunderstanding born of fear. You cannot separate yourself from what you are made of. You can forget. You cannot disconnect. This is why compassion for yourself is essential. Harsh self-judgment tightens the mind. Compassion relaxes it. And a relaxed mind is receptive to truth. Speak to yourself kindly. Not because you are perfect in behavior, but because you are perfect in essence. As this compassion deepens, you may feel called to extend it outward. You will find yourself listening more, judging less. You will feel less need to correct others and more desire to understand them. This is not weakness. This is maturity. When you see others acting from fear, you no longer react with anger. You recognize the forgetting, and recognition softens you. This softening is not passivity. It is wisdom. From this place, your influence grows naturally. People feel safe around you. Conversations become more honest. Your presence becomes calming. You do not need to preach or persuade. Your state of being communicates more than words ever could. This is one of the quiet signs that God's power is moving through you. Another sign is resilience. You recover faster. Disappointments no longer define you. Loss no longer destroys you. Pain no longer convinces you that life is against you. You feel grief, but you do not drown in it. You feel sadness, but you are not consumed by it. You understand that emotions are experiences, not identities. This understanding gives you freedom. Freedom does not mean avoiding pain. It means not being ruled by it. When life challenges you, and it will, you meet it with a deeper center. You do not collapse inward. You do not lash outward. You return inward to the place where God lives in you, and from there you respond. This is strength. And strength like this cannot be taught through words alone. It is cultivated through practice, through remembering, through returning again and again to truth. Each time you choose awareness over reaction, you strengthen this inner foundation. Over time, you will notice that your intuition sharpens. You sense when something is right or not right without needing justification. You feel guided away from what drains you and toward what nourishes you. This guidance is not dramatic. It is subtle, consistent, reliable. Learn to respect it. When you ignore it, life becomes complicated. When you honor it, life simplifies. This is not superstition. It is alignment with intelligence greater than personal reasoning, and as your trust deepens, fear loosens its grip even further. You realize that fear's primary function was to alert you to forgetting. It was never meant to control your life. When you listen to fear without obeying it, it transforms into awareness. You stop running from fear and start learning from it. In this way, even fear becomes a teacher. Nothing is wasted in consciousness. Every experience can return you to truth if you allow it. And that truth is simple. God lives in you, not as an observer, but as life itself. Not as a judge, but as intelligence. Not as distance, but as presence. When you live from this understanding, you do not need constant reassurance. You develop inner assurance. You do not need guarantees. You develop trust. You do not need life to be perfect to feel whole. You are whole now. And from wholeness, everything else becomes an expression, not a compensation. Let this truth settle deeply within you. Do not rush to apply it. Live with it. Sit with it. Return to it. Let it rewire your perceptions gently. There is no finish line here. There is only deepening awareness. And as it deepens, your life becomes quieter in the best way. Less mental noise, less inner conflict. More clarity, more peace, more confidence rooted not in ego but in truth. This is what it means to live from the inside out. Not chasing power but allowing it. Not seeking God but recognizing Him. Not striving for peace but resting in it. God lives in you. And the more you trust this, the more naturally your life will reflect it, through ease, through wisdom, through love, and through a quiet strength that no circumstance can take from you. Let that be enough, and let that be the beginning. And as you allow this truth to settle even more deeply, you may begin to notice something subtle but unmistakable. Your relationship with effort changes. You still take action, you still move, plan, build, and create, but there is far less strain in it. Action no longer feels like pushing a heavy weight uphill. It feels like cooperation with a current that was already moving. This is one of the clearest signs that you are no longer operating from separation. When God lives consciously in you, you stop feeling like you must carry the entire weight of your life on your shoulders. You begin to sense that you are being carried with your effort, not against it. There is a partnership between your intention and a greater intelligence that knows far more than the personal mind ever could. You begin to trust that you do not need to see the entire path to take the next step, and this trust brings courage, not the loud kind, but the steady kind. The courage to say no when something feels wrong. The courage to wait when rushing would only create confusion. The courage to follow an inner truth even when it does not make sense to others. This courage is born from connection. Disconnected people seek certainty. Connected people trust clarity. When you are connected to the divine presence within you, you no longer need constant external reassurance. Approval loses its grip. Criticism loses its sting. Praise becomes pleasant but unnecessary. You are anchored in something deeper than opinion. This does not make you indifferent. It makes you free. Freedom like this allows you to love without fear of loss, to give without fear of depletion, to show up fully without fear of being misunderstood. You realize that what truly belongs to you cannot be taken, and what leaves was never meant to define you. This realization softens the heart, and a softened heart is not weak, it is receptive. Receptivity is how divine power moves. When you are rigid, defensive, or closed, energy cannot flow. When you are open, relaxed, and trusting, life moves through you effortlessly. Ideas come more easily, solutions appear more quickly. Even rest becomes more restorative. You begin to see that much of what you called stress was simply resistance. Resistance to what is, resistance to uncertainty, resistance to letting go. As resistance falls away, peace rises, not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer fighting what you cannot control. This peace does not make you passive. It makes you precise. You stop wasting energy on inner conflict and redirect it toward meaningful action. You speak more clearly. You choose more wisely. You conserve energy for what truly matters, and what matters becomes clearer. When God lives consciously in you, values reorganize themselves. You care less about appearances and more about integrity, less about accumulation and more about contribution, less about being right and more about being real. This shift is not imposed. It emerges naturally. You may find yourself drawn to simplicity, not because you reject life, but because you understand it more deeply. You realize that fulfillment does not come from excess, but from alignment, from doing fewer things with greater presence. Presence is powerful. When you are present, you listen better, you notice more, you respond instead of react. People feel seen around you. Situations feel less chaotic. Even silence becomes comfortable. This is not because you have mastered life, but because you are no longer running from it. And as presence deepens, gratitude becomes effortless. Not forced gratitude for what you think you should appreciate, but genuine gratitude for what you see. A moment of quiet, a breath, a small kindness, a clear thought. Gratitude like this is not a technique, it is a byproduct of awareness. It arises naturally when you stop believing life is withholding from you. You begin to see that life has been generous all along, but fear narrowed your vision. Now your vision widens. You see possibilities where you once saw limitations. You see choices where you once felt trapped. You see growth where you once saw failure. This does not mean you deny difficulty. It means you see beyond it. This perspective brings resilience. Resilience is not toughness. Resilience is flexibility. When you are flexible inwardly, life cannot break you outwardly. You bend. You adapt. You learn. You continue. And through it all, the quiet knowing remains. You are supported. Even in moments of uncertainty, you sense that you are not adrift. There is a center within you that remains steady. You may not know what comes next, but you trust that you will meet it with what is required. This trust is not blind. It is earned through experience. Each time you return to awareness and see that you are guided, strengthened, and sustained, trust grows. It becomes embodied, it becomes natural. Eventually, you stop asking, "Will I be okay?" You begin to know, "I am okay." Not because circumstances guarantee it, but because your foundation is no longer conditional. This is the difference between living from circumstance and living from truth. Circumstances change. Truth remains. And the truth is that God lives in you, not as an idea, not as a belief, but as the very intelligence animating your life. When you align with that intelligence, life becomes less of a struggle and more of a dialogue. You listen, you respond, you trust, and life responds in return. This is not something reserved for mystics or saints. It is available to anyone willing to stop outsourcing their power and start recognizing it within. Anyone willing to stop seeing themselves as separate and start seeing themselves as connected. You do not need to escape the world to live this way. You do not need to withdraw or isolate. You live this truth in ordinary moments, at work, in relationships, in decisions, in rest. That is where it matters most. Spiritual understanding that cannot be lived is incomplete. But this understanding is deeply practical. It shows up in how you handle pressure, how you treat people, how you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. And perhaps most importantly, it shows up in how you face uncertainty. When the future is unclear, you no longer panic. You return inward. You remember that the same intelligence that carried you through the past is present now. You trust that clarity will come when it is needed, not before, not after. This trust frees you from the constant need to control outcomes. Control is heavy, trust is light. When you release the need to control, you regain the ability to enjoy. You laugh more easily, you rest more deeply, you engage more fully. Life feels less like a test and more like a gift. And this is not because life has changed, but because you have stopped resisting it. You have remembered who you are. You are not a fragment in a hostile universe. You are an expression of intelligence in a responsive world. You are not separate from the source of life. You are its movement. Let that understanding guide you gently. When confusion arises, return inward. When fear appears, return inward. When doubt whispers, return inward, not to escape, but to remember God lives in you. And every time you remember this, not once, but again and again, you strengthen the connection that has always been there. Over time, this remembering becomes your natural state, and from that state, your life unfolds with greater ease, greater meaning, and a quiet confidence that no circumstance can take from you. This is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of living it consciously. And as you continue living from this awareness, something else begins to unfold, something deeply liberating. You stop defining yourself by what happens to you. Success no longer inflates you. Failure no longer diminishes you. Praise no longer determines your worth. Criticism no longer shakes your foundation. You realize that your identity is not tied to outcomes, but to presence. This is one of the greatest freedoms a human being can know. When God lives consciously in you, your sense of self becomes rooted, not reactive. You no longer rise and fall with circumstances. You experience them, learn from them, and move through them, but you are not consumed by them. There is a steady center within you that remains untouched by the ups and downs of life. That center is not emotional numbness. It is emotional stability. You still feel joy. You still feel sadness. You still feel excitement, disappointment, hope, and longing. But these feelings no longer define who you are. They pass through you, not over you. This is what it means to be spiritually grounded. From this grounded place, your relationships begin to change in subtle but powerful ways. You stop relating from need and start relating from fullness. You stop seeking someone to complete you and start sharing who you already are. Love becomes less about attachment and more about expression. You give love because you have it. You receive love because you are open to it. This shift transforms connection. Relationships become lighter, more honest, more real. You are no longer trying to extract validation or security from others. You are meeting them as equals, two expressions of the same life. And when relationships end or change, as some inevitably do, you grieve without losing yourself. You feel the pain, but you do not interpret as abandonment by life or by God. You understand that change is part of expression, not evidence of loss. Nothing essential is ever taken from you, because what is essential lives within you. This understanding also changes how you experience solitude. Being alone no longer feels like emptiness. It feels like space, space to listen, space to breathe, space to reconnect. You stop fearing silence because silence no longer feels like absence. It feels like presence. In silence, you remember. You remember that you are supported even when no one is around. You remember that you are guided even when no one is advising you. You remember that you are loved even when no one is speaking it aloud. This remembrance is deeply healing. Many people spend their lives running from silence because silence forces them to face themselves. But when you know that God lives in you, silence becomes safe. It becomes restorative. It becomes a place of renewal rather than avoidance. This is why inner stillness is not optional. It is essential. Not as an escape from life, but as a return to truth. When you make space for stillness, even briefly, the noise of fear begins to dissolve. The constant mental commentary softens. You stop rehearsing the past and worrying about the future. You come back to now, and now is where power lives. Power is never in yesterday. Power is never in tomorrow. Power is always in the present moment. The present moment is where divine intelligence operates. When your attention is here, aligned, open, you are available to guidance. When your attention is scattered, pulled into regret or anticipation, you disconnect from clarity. This is why presence is so transformative. You do not need to control the future to feel safe. You need to be present enough to respond when it arrives. And you are capable of that. As this awareness strengthens, you may notice that your intuition becomes more reliable than overthinking. You stop analyzing everything to exhaustion. You sense what is right and act on it without needing excessive justification. This does not mean you abandon reason. It means reason is informed by wisdom. Wisdom knows when to act and when to wait. There is a rhythm to life that logic alone cannot grasp. When you are aligned with the intelligence within you, you begin to feel that rhythm. You know when something is ripe and when it is not. You know when to speak and when silence is more powerful. You know when effort is required and when trust is the greater action. This discernment is one of the great gifts of spiritual alignment. It saves you from unnecessary struggle. Much of human suffering does not come from circumstances themselves, but from resisting the natural timing of things, trying to force what is not ready, holding on to what is already complete. When you trust the intelligence within you, you stop fighting the flow. You begin to move with life instead of against it, and life responds. Opportunities feel less forced, decisions feel less heavy, mistakes feel less catastrophic. You begin to see that even missteps can redirect you toward greater clarity. Nothing is wasted when you are aligned. Everything becomes information. Everything becomes part of growth. This perspective brings humility, not humiliation, but humility. You no longer need to pretend you have all the answers. You are comfortable saying, "I don't know yet," and that openness allows answers to arrive. Certainty closes the mind, curiosity opens it. When God lives consciously in you, curiosity replaces fear. You approach life with interest rather than defense. You explore rather than brace. You engage rather than withdraw. This makes life richer. Even challenges become meaningful. You ask not, "How do I get out of this?" but "What is this teaching me about myself, about trust, about alignment?" And when the lesson is integrated, the challenge often dissolves naturally. This is not mysticism. It is consciousness at work. As you continue to live this way, you may notice something else. Your sense of purpose becomes quieter but clearer. You stop obsessing over finding the one thing you are meant to do. You realize that purpose is not a destination, it is a way of being. Purpose is how you show up, how you listen, how you care, how you create. You express purpose through whatever role you are currently living. Whether you are working, studying, caring for others, building something new, or resting, purpose is present when you are aligned. You do not need a grand mission to matter. You need presence. Presence infuses meaning into everything. And from that place, your life begins to feel coherent. Not perfect, but coherent. Events make sense in hindsight. Connections reveal patterns. You begin to trust that there is an intelligence weaving your experiences together, even when you cannot see the full picture. This trust brings peace. Peace that is not dependent on outcomes. Peace that does not require certainty. Peace that remains even in the unknown. This is the peace that comes from knowing that you are not separate from the source of life. That whatever unfolds, you are not alone in it. God lives in you, not as a distant overseer, but as your very life, not as a judge, but as wisdom, not as an external authority, but as an inner guide. When you live from this knowing, your life becomes simpler, not because there are fewer challenges, but because there is less inner conflict. You stop arguing with reality. You stop fighting yourself, and in that space something beautiful happens. You begin to feel at home in your own life. Not someday, not when things are perfect, but now. And that feeling, quiet, grounded, steady, is the clearest sign that you have begun to unlock the power that has always lived within you. The power of awareness, the power of trust, the power of alignment. This power does not shout, it does not demand, it does not rush, it waits patiently for recognition. And every time you remember, every time you return inward, you strengthen that connection. You deepen that awareness. You live a little more from truth and a little less from fear. This is the path, not dramatic, not forceful, but profound, and it is always available to you in this moment and in every moment that follows, because God lives in you. And now, as we come to the quiet close of this message, I want you to pause, not to think, not to analyze, but simply to feel. Feel your presence. Feel the awareness that has been listening all along. That awareness is not distant. It is not passive. It is alive, intelligent, and infinitely capable. That awareness is where God lives in you. You have not been learning something new today. You have been remembering something ancient, something your soul has always known, but your mind temporarily forgot. You were never meant to struggle endlessly, to feel unworthy, to believe you were alone in a vast and indifferent world. You were never meant to beg life for permission to exist fully. You were meant to express. You were meant to allow the power that created you to move through you freely into your thoughts, your actions, your relationships, and your choices. You were meant to live from trust instead of fear, from clarity instead of confusion, from wholeness instead of lack. Nothing about you is broken. Nothing about you is missing. Nothing about you needs to be earned. The power you have been seeking has been quietly sustaining you your entire life. Every breath you have taken, every insight that has guided you, every moment you survived when you thought you wouldn't. That was not luck. That was not coincidence. That was the intelligence within you at work. God has never left you. You have only been learning how to notice. From this moment forward, let life be simpler. Let trust replace tension. Let awareness replace effort. Let peace replace the constant need to control outcomes. When uncertainty arises, as it will, return inward. When fear appears, as it may, return inward. When doubt whispers, return inward. You always know where to go now. You do not need perfect faith. You do not need perfect discipline. You do not need perfect understanding. You only need willingness. Willingness to remember. Willingness to trust. Willingness to align. And alignment is gentle. It feels like relief. It feels like coming home. It feels like finally laying down a burden you were never meant to carry. Let your life unfold from this place, not rushing, not resisting, not forcing, but allowing wisdom to guide you, allowing love to move through you, allowing strength to rise when it is needed, allowing rest when it is time to rest. You are supported more deeply than you realize. You are guided more clearly than you think, and you are loved more completely than your mind can measure. This is not the end of anything. It is the beginning of living with awareness. God lives in you. Let that truth be your foundation. Let it steady you when the world feels uncertain. Let it guide you when the path feels unclear. Let it remind you, again and again, of who you really are. You are not separate. You are not powerless. You are not alone. You are the living expression of divine intelligence, here now, breathing, choosing, becoming. And from this knowing, go forward quietly, confidently and peacefully. The power is already within you.